Good morning and welcome to all those participating and tuning in to the first webinar of our series on minority business procurement. We plan to take you through the ins and outs of minority business ownership and how to create additional revenue streams with the state of Maryland. The first segment of this three-part series will include conversations with the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, which is housed within the Department of Transportation. As well as we have a minority business owner on with us today who has also successfully navigated the state procurement business as well. The second webinar will showcase the Governor's Office of Small, Minority, and Business Affairs. And then the third and final webinar will feature legislators who have championed this issue and their visions to help increase the amount of participation by minority-owned businesses with the state of Maryland. So first, I'd like to provide a little bit of information about us, your hosts. My name is Sherry Nickerson, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at Old Line Government Affairs. And we're joined by Derek Covington, who is a legislative specialist within our office. Old Line has a combined total of 10 plus decades of both legislative and executive political and policy experience. We have diverse and bipartisan backgrounds in corporate law, corporate sales, and business ownership across industries ranging from insurance to finance to energy and consumer goods. We also have direct experience working in state government and serving in elected office in Maryland, and want to take every opportunity possible to highlight the work of minority business owners here in this state. So we're hosting this series on minority business procurement to educate business owners in the state about the MBE certification process and to help them learn to navigate the system effectively.
Joining us today for today's webinar is Vashti Pyatt, the Outreach Coordinator at the Office of Small and Minority Business Policy at the Maryland Department of Transportation, and Jody Sandwisch, the founder of Sure IT Solutions, who successfully participated in the MBE process to the point that she could no longer handle the workload alone and sold to a larger technology company named Jovian Concepts. Jody has joined Jovian and currently serves as a business development consultant. Let's start with Vashti. Can you describe for us exactly what your office does and how you work with minority-owned businesses to create opportunities in the state of Maryland?
Sure. So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Vashti Pyatt. I am the outreach coordinator for the Office of Small and Minority Business Policy. So what our office does is basically we are responsible, excuse me for my emails, for the implementation of training and development for those MBEs who are looking to be certified with the state. So we are responsible for everything that you see on the website for MDOT, regarding anything that an MBE may need in order to know how to go about the application process and things of that nature. We do all outreach events, so that's going to be internal and external to make sure that our MBEs within the state of Maryland and within DC or that DMV area are aware of what MDOT has to offer for MBEs. We are also responsible for working with the procurement office here as well as the OMBE office, which are the ones that do the application process. They're the officers that actually go through the entire process and do the investigation. So we work hand in hand with those three, with those other two departments to make sure that our MBEs are aware of all upcoming opportunities. So we are really the ones who are hands-on, and we are the ones who come face to face with our MBEs, listen to their stories, and make sure that they are effectively communicated with the other departments here at the Maryland Department of Transportation.
Which is exactly why we have you on today. So we have the experts here. Now, Jody, by way of introduction, can you tell us, you've owned a minority business, can you tell us about your business, what it did, a little bit of background, why you started it, and then, so this is a two-part question. Was your original intent when you started your business to do government procurement, or did you just see that as an extra revenue stream after you started?
Okay, sure. Well, good morning. Again, my name is Jody Sandwisch. I was the founder of Sure IT Solutions. It formerly started under the name G. Bailey and Associates, and we changed the name about 4 or 5 years after it was originally founded to Shore IT Solutions. My original partner and I were both DoD contractors working for a small company, and just decided to go out on our own with the help of this company. They did sponsor us, and we got into the DoD and started working some contracts. They were IT service-based contracts for system administration, systems engineering, software development, and we just slowly started to grow the company. And again, changed the name after I bought my partner out, and it became just me. I was the original, the only owner left, and certified as a small business, woman-owned small business. And again, all of our business was really conducted within the DoD confines of that industry, the intelligence community. And as you're trying to grow your business and diversify, it became a good idea to start networking with other companies that had other business ventures in other industry areas. So I learned a lot from some other industry partners about the minority business office within MDOT. And I went to the website that I discussed, and it was very user-friendly. So as I worked through the website and got the information that I needed, I became interested in diversifying Shore IT's portfolio of service offerings into another market. And so I took advantage of all of the great information that is out there on that website and read the material, read what I had to do to go through the process, attended the workshops, and really learned a lot through the process. And it was very definitely something that I would recommend. It was rewarding. I learned a lot about some other businesses. I learned how to do business with the state of Maryland. There's a ton of workshops and seminars that you can attend to enhance your networking and build those skill sets with other companies and learn how your capabilities can augment theirs or supplement theirs for other teaming and business opportunities. So that's how I got started.
Now, Vashti, what are some of the qualifications necessary for a small business to be considered for MBE status?
When we are looking at MBEs, or when MBEs are interested in doing the application process, we look at 5 different eligibility standards, and I cover this in our monthly webinar. So we look at ownership. So we want to know, okay, how did you gain ownership of the company? Are you a small business? We also look at to see if you are a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and if you are at least 51% owner of that company. So those are one of the few things that we look in terms of ownership. Now, we also look at minority status. So do you fall under the category of a woman, African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, subcontinent Asian American. And for our MBE program, we also look to see if you are a disabled person as well. So those are, a few of the things that we look at when we look at minority status. Now, there are some, I wouldn't say loopholes, but there are some people that do challenge the list that we do have because say, hey, I don't see my minority listed on this list. However, I feel like I do classify under that. And there are some people who do challenge that. So I just want to, point that out there. That's also something that we do look at. Another thing we look at is control. So I think that's one of the most important things as well with minority status. Being that 51% owner, do you have the managerial, the technical competence? Do you have that overall knowledge and experience in the field that you are trying to get certified in? So we have a lot of companies sometimes that come in like, hey, I want to get certified in this NICS code, but they don't have any background in that NICS code. And that unfortunately raises a red flag for us, because if you're going to be certified with MDOT and you're going to go after these state contracts, you have to know what you're doing. So that's one of those things that we take very, very seriously. That's why they call us one of the most aggressive MBE programs in the country, because we take it very seriously, especially if you're going through our course and you have our name attached to your certification. We also look at personal net worth and size. So along with being an MBE, being in that minority status, we want to make sure that you fall under that personal net worth cap. So we have a MBE cap that's adjusted on an annual basis. Right now, it's about $1.7 million. So if you fall under that cap, that means that you qualify to be an MBE. Now for our DBE and our ACDBE, so ACDBE for the acronyms, I'm sorry, is going to be our airport concession, and our DBE, our disadvantaged business enterprise, that's going to be about 1.3 million. So we want to make sure that your firm falls under those caps as well. And that leads right into the size standards. So we mirror the SBA size standards and their regulations as what they have for those different firms. So it depends on your NICS code and what your firm is trying to be certified in. And we look at those NICS codes in that industry to see those size standards, and we go based off of that. So those are the 5 things that we look at: size, control, personal net worth, minority status, and ownership.
How would I apply to be an MBE, to have that status? Would I have to go to your website? Would I go, if I'm working, or if I desire to work with a certain agency, would I go to that agency? How would that process start?
Okay. So I always, at our webinars, I always give people, the 3 options that they can do. So first we have the basic step of becoming an MBE. So going to our website or attending our monthly application workshop, which I highly recommend you do first, because it kind of gives you a good overview of like, okay, is this something that I want to do? Do I think this might be a little bit too much? But I always tell people to do the webinars first. They are very, very helpful. I do the webinars and we talk for a good 2 hours and answer your questions. We even have resource guests to kind of help you, kind of calm your nerves, because it is a very long process and it can be a little nerve-wracking. So I always tell people to do the monthly webinar first. So once you do that, we always tell people, okay, do the online version of the application. We do allow people to do the hard copy of the application, but due to COVID, there are a lot of delays, as well as people being very, very nervous about sending sensitive information via certified mail. And a lot of people are still teleworking, so they're not sure who's going to land into. So those are the concerns. But I always tell people to do the online application. We have a brand new portal that is very user-friendly. You create an account. It allows you to start the application. You have 60 days to complete it, so you can start and save as you go. But the application also serves as a triple check. So when you are doing the application, a lot of things that we get are incomplete. A lot of applications that we do get are incomplete, and it delays that process for your application to go through. So that online application serves as a triple check because it will not allow you to submit that application unless you fill it out completely. So, I know there's some things that people may not be able to answer, being a new business in some cases. So we just tell them to put does not apply or NA, but that's the step. So once you do the monthly webinar, you're going to then go into the online portal and begin filling out that application. You have 60 days. So that's one step. I also tell people, before you get certified or while you're doing that certification process, to please register for Marketplace Advantage and SBR. So that's going to be the Small Business Reserve Program and Maryland Marketplace Advantage. So that's going to be through DGS. And those are self-registration, portals or systems that I call them for those who are not necessarily MBE certified, but can still bid on state and government contracts.
So, Jody, you've actually been through this process, and you mentioned already that you found the workshops really useful. Can you kind of describe from your point of view, from the minority business owner's point of view, how this process works and how is it easy? Is it difficult? Like, give us your perspective as to the MBE certification process.
When I started it, I had already gone to the website and looked at the information and knew immediately this is something that I wanted to complete. I wanted to apply for this. So what I did is I downloaded all the materials that I could. I printed them off and I read through everything so that I understood it. I even printed off the application. And I had questions around those some of the questions on there. I needed to get a little bit more understanding as to what they were looking for. So naturally, I took all of my materials at that point, and then I attended the workshop, listened to what was presented. They were very well organized. The room was very spacious. They walked through everything. They answered every question. And then what I really liked about it was at the end of the workshop, they still had specialists on site that if you wanted to go sit down and talk one-on-one with them, you could. And because I had already prepared by going through the application, circling some things that I had questions on, or just needing more guidance and getting some clarity, I had that one-on-one interaction with a state representative who was patient. They explained everything I needed to know, and they commented on the notes that I had taken, and they said, these are your next steps. This is where you get this. And they answered everything that I needed. And then it was up to me to go back and complete the process. All in all, it probably took me a little bit longer than some of the other companies, because the vast majority of the people that attended the workshop that I went to were new business owners. There wasn't a whole lot of historical data in terms of contracts and financial statements. They were just starting up. So I think that might make the process a little less cumbersome for them, because there's not a whole lot of documentation that they can show or have. I'm not speaking on that experience. I'm just speaking from my experience, because we had already been in business for 7 years. We had a lot of contracts, and there was a lot of information we had to supply because of that. You know, work history, contract information, financial statements around all of that. And so I had a lot of documentation to compile because of the history that the company already had. So that also drove a lot of the questions that I had. But nonetheless, the process took, I think, from start to finish, it took me about 8 months to go through to get the certification. But what I also really liked and really appreciated was towards the end of the process, when they're making their final determination, you have to go. At that time, I went on site and did an interview in front of a panel of MDOT representatives. And there was probably a good 15 or 20 of them in the room, and me. But they asked me some questions. They asked me, I had a representative assigned to me to help me and prepare me for this. So she was also in the room with me. So it was the two of us facing a panel of people, and they just asked some questions. And my perspective of that experience was they just want to make sure that you are the owner and you can validate your knowledge of the contracts, that you're not just covering for somebody else who's trying to use your status, your socioeconomic status, to further their business. It's a protective measure, and it's definitely something that you have to go through. You have to demonstrate your knowledge of your business in terms of the contracts that you have or where you intend to go. And you have to be able to speak to the history of your company, if you have some. And I think it's a due diligence process that I think is absolutely necessary. And I enjoyed the conversation with everybody in the room. They were very friendly. It wasn't an inquisition. It was just a conversation. And they were really interested in learning about your company and what you did, where you were going with it, or what your intentions were, what were you going to do with it? What was your interest in going through the program? And what you had to offer the industry as well. So I thought the representatives at the MDOT MBE office were very professional, kind, patient, very patient, and very helpful. They helped me through every bit of the process. So yes, it might have been lengthy given the nature of all the history that I had with the company, but it was definitely worth going through in so many ways. It was a great professional development process for me. It got me to really understand everything that we had done as a company. And you think I know what we did. I know we did this, we had these contracts, but when you really have to tell that story in a cohesive manner such that somebody can understand truly what you've done, it's quite an experience, and it's great for your professional growth as well. So I learned a lot from it.
It seems to me, I don't mean to interrupt, but it seems to me like you as a legit minority business owner would appreciate that process, given I have heard, and Vashti, I'm sure you've seen, people that just hire a figurehead just so they can get that certification and do business. So you had to have appreciated the thoroughness of this process, and it sounds like you did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to follow what she was saying. So there is a 4-step process. So she's referring to that 4-step process. So once you submit that application, then they do that, the investigation, to where they do the initial investigation. Then they do the job site, interview, like just see, okay, does this person have a space designated for their business? And then you have the evaluation. Now, not everyone goes through this process. I have seen that it is a lot of more of the seasoned businesses that do go through this process as well. But that's going to be the evaluation. So she's talking about sitting amongst the MBEAC committee. So it sounds intimidating because, you know, you're like sitting at the end of the table and then there are people that are surrounding you. But it's actually, they're just asking questions just to make sure, okay, you know, your business has shown a lot of growth. You know, we see that you have this, this, and this. We just want to make sure that we, you know, tie up any loose ends or any other questions that we might have because of the report from that initial investigation. So it's really, really good to hear, you know, a lot of people tell me that, oh yeah, that process was so intimidating. I don't want to have to go through that. But it was good to hear that, you know, it wasn't as intimidating as most people say. Like sometimes you just sit there, okay, yeah, I have all this information in front of me. This is the truth. You know, I have nothing to hide, and it's a breeze. But it was really good to hear another you know, point of view from that those MBEAC meetings. So that was good to hear as well.
It reminds me of a lot of defending my thesis in graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
which was nerve-wracking too. I'm not going to lie.
So we've been talking a lot about the MDOT side of the small minority and women business affairs. I remember when we first reached out to you, Vashti, me, and Sherry, we were a little bit confused about the MDOT side compared to the governor's office. Can you give us a brief understanding of what differentiates the two offices in both of their missions?
Sure. So with our office, we basically follow under everything the governor basically wants us to do. But the way that it's housed is just a little different. So most people say, okay, well, why are you guys housed at transportation? Is it just strictly transportation contracts? That's not the case. So with the governor's office, they focus we focus on the same things, but the way that the state has separated us, now I wouldn't say separated us, but like kind of broken down what exactly we do. It really is due to the amount of procurement opportunities, contracting opportunities, and where things need to be housed. That's essentially what it is. So with the governor's office, like I would say for SBR, the Small Business Reserve Program, that's housed at the governor's office. Why? I do not have the exact answer. We just know that they are, that's where it's placed at the moment. But like for us, when I mentioned we have the disabled persons housed under the MBE program, with the governor's office, they have the veterans business enterprise. So that's going to be at the governor's office. So the DBE and, you know, SBE and the DBE programs are all under the US DOT. We're just housed in different locations. We all work hand in hand, but they work a little bit more closely with the governor and exactly with his, you know, his legislative, you know, they just work directly with the governor. It's a little tricky to really explain because I've been in it for a minute. So it's just like, okay, yeah, they're just the governor's office. So we just work hand in hand. But it's a little tricky to explain, but all in all, we do the same thing. It's just on different levels and who's a little bit closer to the governor's office and that type of legislation. That's essentially what it is.
So let's go back to the process a little bit. Jody, was there anything that you did not anticipate, any surprises that popped up when you were going through the process of applying?
Not for me, because the instructions and the information that was present out there on the website with everything that you could download and read, it was so informative. I knew exactly what was expected. And if I didn't quite understand the reason why or I needed further clarification, again, the representatives were there to answer that for me, but nothing was surprising. I wasn't blindsided by anything. It was very straightforward. And as long as you take the time to read the information that they provide you, you are very well prepared. And again, they have people there to assist and help you through the process.
So I'll make two comments on that. Number one, Vashti, it sounds like your office has like really covered everything and really, it sounds like you're receptive, you're open, you're like just really great to work with. But then there's also something to be said, Jody, for somebody who is as thorough as you in preparing. Like, I think there are some people, and Vashti, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that probably walk into your office and go, all right, what do I do? And are not as prepared as she. It sounds like she did a lot of research on this prior to actually coming to you. Is that the case? Do you have a lot of people that walk in unprepared?
We'll say there are some that come in, already knowing what questions to ask, but then you do have a few saying, hey, I don't know how to fill this out, or hey, I don't know how to do this, or hey, I don't know how to, which is okay, because it can be a very overwhelming process. So we try to be receptive. I know customer service is a top priority for me. So the most frustrating thing is if I have a question on an assignment that I'm doing, and I cannot get an answer right away, and somebody is not answering the phone, I become to get, frustrated, and we don't want that to happen. So I get emails all the time, hey, I don't know how to fill this out. People will send me screenshots of a portion of the application. I'm like, okay, we're going to get somebody to help you right away. It's been extremely difficult though. It's different than helping somebody in person versus just via email, because I'm a face-to-face type of person, and trying to make sure and follow up with everyone, via email or phone calls has been very, very challenging because our webinar numbers have gone up. So compared to the 60 people that we have in the room that Jody was talking about, we've gone up to having 200 people attend our webinars. Wow. So imagine the emails and like, hey, I have a question about this. I have a question about this. So it's gotten really hard, but, trying to be responsive is really, really the one thing that helps people say, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Somebody's there to assist me and somebody's there to help me. So that's what we try to do. My office is very small team of 2 people. So we try to do as much as possible. But the OMBE office, even if they are overwhelmed at this moment, they're still doing, exactly what they can to make sure those businesses continue with the process. We don't want somebody to start and then stop and then, not complete the process. So, yeah. Well,
it sounds from what Jody says that like you guys are knocking it out of the park when it comes to that customer service. So
we're trying. Thank you.
It was a really good experience. And, every year you have to recertify. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but again, as long as you understand what that entails. And when I did it, you had to kind of recertify that nothing has changed in those 5 areas. And then I do believe it required a notary. And then you just file everything online and just, so they keep track of where your company is in the status of your organization, just to make sure that you're following the guidelines as they have been, implemented. So, yeah.
I know you were talking about face-to-face interactions, I guess how you haven't had as much as I guess as before. And then you even said how COVID and like delays have affected, I guess, hard copy applications. Yeah. How much of that can you put onto, I guess, the pandemic, and how have you had to shift what you do day-to-day operations in terms of COVID?
I will say that the transition between in-office, workshops and webinars and doing all of our outreach, it was an adjustment, but it was a smooth adjustment, I will say, because the system that we use is very user-friendly. It allows us to house almost 500 people. So it's, been able to help us a lot with getting more information out to a number of businesses. So, due to COVID, a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, what is my next step? What am I going to do? How am I going to make a comeback? Do I need to do certain things to get back in place? So we've seen a huge uptick in those registration numbers. So like I said, we've gone from 60 to almost 300 people. So that has had an impact on us, but it also has an impact on the officers, I would say under us for OMBE, because they're the ones who have to go through the investigation process and things like that. So instead of going and, getting in a car and driving to the on-site visits. There have been times where they've requested photos. Okay, let me see a photo of your actual office space. So we've adjusted. However, it has caused some delays in how we and how long it takes. So usually we'll say it takes an average of 3 months to process. It has been a little bit longer, so about 4 months. And that's just an average. There's some special cases, but it's just because of having to do everything virtually and everything being submitted on a virtual basis as well. So like I said, like the pictures from the investigation, the MBEAC meetings now being virtual and on Teams. So, everyone trying to, reconnect with the technology and get acclimated to everything. It can be a little difficult, and especially with our older businesses who are, trying to hire younger, employees to take over that technical aspect. I've heard personally that they've had issues with trying to acclimate with the whole COVID thing and everything being virtual as well. So that's definitely had an impact from what I've seen. But we've had a smooth transition. Like I said, we've tried to make sure that everything is smooth. Everyone gets a response. I have my phone with me all the time. My tablet is always up just to make sure that somebody knows that there is somebody there to assist them with it, whatever they need. So yeah, it's been an adjustment, but I will say it has had its benefits as well.
It sounds like everybody else, COVID has actually required us to lengthen our hours, given that we're always accessible, whether we're at home or whether we're in the office or whatever. It seems like COVID's affected everybody in that way.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
it sounds like everybody else, COVID has actually required us to lengthen our hours, given that we're always accessible, whether we're at home or whether we're in the office or whatever. It seems like COVID's affected everybody in that way.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So I have a question for you, Vashti, that I know is not necessarily your forte. And this is more a topic of conversation for our third in this series when we talk about legislation. But 2021 legislative session, there was a bill that was filed. It did not pass, but it was filed that would have created basically a procurement preference program. It would require that a certain percentage of minority business contracts be given to a very specific region in the world. And we don't need to go into details about where that is or who that would limit it to. But what is your office's thoughts on doing something like that?
So first and foremost, that bill would directly affect at least 400 to 500 firms. So MBE firms. So that new bill proposed a new P&W, which no longer allows those firms to be considered an MBE. So that would definitely run into a number of legal issues, especially with how our current MBE program is set up. And that's one thing that we are always trying to avoid. And especially knowing that this is a group that is quite large in our program, it would be a direct hit to them. And it would not be wise for us to, consider it, because the program initially was set up to make sure that we are inclusive of all, minorities. But this bill gave certain restrictions, and it would also eliminate those minorities as well. And that is something that we do not want to happen. So it does not meet the constitutional muster at all. And it, like I said before, it will pose a significant legal issue with the state of Maryland. So that's just a quick, summary that it would directly affect a number of minorities, and we do not want that.
Well, and we appreciate you commenting on that, because like I said, that's not necessarily your purview. So, but I think it's a very important issue. And Jody, you kind of look like you want to say something, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we actually had a very, 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 very busy year looking at the new bills that were coming through. So it was pretty hectic. But yeah, this one we knew that, you know, between our office and our attorney, you know, just looking at it from a standpoint where, hey, this system has been in place for a few years, you know, with minor changes. This is very, very drastic, and it would not end well at all. Yeah. So
when we obtained our MBE, the networking with other organizations really paid off, and, you know, word of mouth and discussions over the phone and even networking meetings, you got to learn what companies were going after the larger prime contracts and the MBE positions that they had to fill. Because there's a certain percentage of a one contract that has to be designated, not just to MBEs overall, but even certain types of MBEs. So 8% has to be woman-owned, or 4% has to be, you know, a certain other designator. So they're very specific about how you have to partition the workload on the contract as your team. And a lot of times the experiences I had with some of the primes were they knew they needed your MBE status, but they didn't treat you with a lot of respect. It was, you were there to do as you were told, and we will tell you who you're going to hire to fill these positions. And they really called all of the shots. The only thing that I mean, not all the contractors, not all the primes treat you like this, but there are primes out there who will treat you as, do as I say, if you want to be on this team, instead of feeling as a valued partner where you can bring your capabilities, and you as the owner and the person running your company know who in your organization, what employees best fit that role because of their capabilities. You've worked with these people. Your opinion in a lot of ways just really didn't matter. It's what they wanted. They called the shots, period.
Right.
That personal experience was very unfortunate, but I also had some good primes that did not do that. Just be careful who you team with.
Right. Absolutely. Vashti, did you want to comment on that as well?
yes, absolutely. So I've definitely heard situations that Jody has spoken about from MBEs who have worked with primes. But I've also heard about primes that don't particularly give other MBEs a chance, I guess you would say. Like, they are very, very particular about who they want to work for them. And they continue to go back to that person, you know, time and time again. And that's one of those things I've heard from a lot of our MBEs. So one of the things that I do advise some of our MBEs to do is, if they are able to compete on some of those contracts as prime contractors, you know, to say, okay, this is what I've seen. Let me, you know, see if I can change it and do things in the right manner. I've also recommended that those MBEs who have seen that, you know, certain disparate treatment while working with primes, to contact the MBE liaisons. So there are MBE liaisons for each state agency that can, you know, basically be a voice for them, saying, hey, you know, this MBE is saying, hey, I'm not being treated fairly, or this has happened, or I haven't been paid on time, or anything of that nature. So always tell people to please utilize your MBE liaisons. There are a number of them, and they're listed on the governor's website. But that's one of the main things that I tell our MBEs. Make sure that you use, I'm sorry?
I was just going to ask, again, I don't mean to interrupt, but does that ever create backlash for the MBEs?
What do you mean backlash for
from the primaries?
So no, because the prime is aware that the MBE has an MBE liaison. Gotcha. So it is the prime's responsibility to make sure they are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Like, we understand that you are trying to meet a goal and you need to hire an MBE. However, there are things that you signed up for, and that things that are, you know, written in black and white that show you, hey, you're supposed to do this. Your MBE is entitled to do this as well. So a lot of primes, unfortunately, have kind of put their own rules inside of their own, on their own terms, which is unfortunate. It hurts me to hear that actually happens on a regular basis, unfortunately. But it has gotten a little better because primes are seeing, okay, this is an issue. MBE liaisons are actually, doing what they're supposed to do for their MBEs, and MBEs are actually, I would say politely, addressing the primes on what they are doing and how it is not accurate. So those are the two things that I would say our MBEs need to do. But I completely understand what Jody is saying. I have heard from MBEs that is a situation in not most cases, but in some cases, because this doesn't happen with all primes. I just want to be very clear. This does not happen with all primes, but there are a few out there that will do their own thing just to make sure that they meet that goal. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but that's why we push our MBEs to compete on or bid on a contract as a prime, or be an SBE, to make sure that you don't have to worry about unjustified bundling of contracts or anything of that nature. So we definitely push for that, just to kind of not, I wouldn't say balance it out, but to completely avoid that in the future.
It's also good to note that, yes, the MBE liaison is somebody that is there to assist you. Another just word of advice for MBEs going to prime on a team, also outside of make sure you know who you're going to be supporting with, know who your teammates are, is make sure you also understand the requirements of the prime for their MBE. Mm-hmm. Don't just depend on your prime to tell you. All the information you need to know is either on their website or through your MBE liaison, because you also have we did have a monthly filing report that we had to submit directly to our MBE liaison outside of the prime. So it was my understanding that was the liaison's way of making sure outside of the prime that the MBE's requirements were being met. Are you getting paid? When's the last invoice you submitted? When's the last one you received? There are financial monthly reporting things that the MBE does have to complete outside of the prime. So don't just expect your prime to do everything for you.
Right.
It's very clear that both of you know what you're talking about. Clearly there's experience in what you both do and what both of your perspectives to the whole MBE program. What's one piece of advice that you would have for anyone starting a small minority-owned business?
If you choose to go down the path of an MBE, educate yourself. Make sure you read the materials that are out there on the website, download, read, reach out to the Office of MBE at the MDOT. They are there to help you. And make sure you just empower yourself to be knowledgeable on the topic, because you have your best interest in mind. You as the company owner, you know what's best for your company. The representatives down at MDOT at the MBE office are there to help you, and just be educated on it and ask the questions that you need answers to. That's the best advice I can give.
That's great advice, Jody.
So I definitely agree with Jody. Definitely make sure that you educate yourself. Yes, we have webinars, on a monthly basis, but definitely make sure that you educate yourself. But also, we want you to have patience. This is a process that doesn't just happen overnight, but the patience definitely is a key factor. So once you do the process, once you start the process, it's definitely going to be worth it. But while you are going through that process, that 4-step process, throughout those few months, I always tell our small businesses, sign up for Emailer Marketplace, SBR, become familiar with the pre-bid meetings, familiarize yourself with the RFPs, make sure that you know the terminology as well, because once you get certified, we don't want you to be like, okay, well, what do I do next? So make sure that you familiarize yourself with those steps and how to bid on contracts. And Emma and SBR definitely sets up a good stepping stone for that. But also the main thing, I definitely want people to know that once you are certified, that does not automatically mean that you're going to get a contract. That means that you have, met our standards here at MDOT, but you have to take it upon yourself to network. So that's why I always tell people, while you are going through the process, while you're waiting, doing the investigation, doing the evaluation, make sure that you are networking with those primes, giving them your capability statements, doing your quick little elevator speech, but making sure that they know who you are and what you do, So once you are completed, once you have completed that certification process, you hit the ground running and you're ready to go. But make sure you network with other businesses, like small businesses as well, because I've seen a lot of small businesses come together and work on a contract as well. So definitely network. You have to do the work. It's not just going to come to you. People are not just going to search and be like, oh, okay, yeah, you have to network. But I also want to say that I've seen lately, especially with this new virtual age, especially with COVID, the profile that you're on, like the directory for MDOT that has over 7,000 firms, make sure that you add references to your profile. When the government, like government sectors or private sectors or anyone is looking for an MBE, they're going to use that directory. But the thing that's going to make you stand out is the references. So who you've worked with in the past. That might not be exactly for our new businesses, but those who are, seasoned, make sure you have your references on your profile, because those references are one of those things that really stick out with the primes. Like, okay, I see this person, I see what they do, but if they see a certain name that you've worked with or a certain person that you've worked with or a certain company that you've worked with, that also raises a flag like, hey, let's reach out to them to see, what they can do, because I've seen they work with them. Let's see if they can work with us. So definitely network and make sure that your profile is always up to date and you have references on your profile. So those are
just to throw in a shameless plug for Old Line Government Affairs as well. So those are the things the kinds of things that we help with as well. So once people become MBEs, we can also introduce people to government agencies and to other primaries, and so so that's what we do is with companies that aren't well known, because as you two probably know, a lot of government agencies have been doing business with the same companies for many years, and they don't often look outside that web. So on Old Line Government Affairs, we can come in and make those introductions to the procurement people within state agencies and to other prime contractors. So just wanted to throw a shameless plug in there.
Yep. Oh, and one last thing. I also want to mention that I know you mentioned what you mentioned what your company does. I also want to mention that on our website, on our calendars, they have a lot of technical trainings as well to kind of help you, figure out, okay, how do I do this, or what do I do for this, and especially for government contracts and state contracts. So I always tell people to definitely listen in on those technical trainings, because you won't always get it, firsthand. You like just reading. Sometimes you have to have or hear it from somebody who has experience in that field as well. So definitely attend those technical trainings. This is just a plug. They are completely free. They're with the governor's office, but they are very, very helpful, as well as, procurement and matchmaking events. But those technical trainings are really, really helpful in how you navigate your way through the state contracts and government contracts as well.
And it sounds like, Jody, you utilize those a lot as well.
Yes, and also something just to throw out there for companies that are just starting to go through the process of the MBE certification and the application part. There are MBEs or companies out there that can serve as mentors. Jovian can serve as a mentor in terms of getting you through the process, getting organized, and making sure that you're structured with what to expect and how to go through that process, and utilizing the resources that were mentioned. So we are there to help as well.
Excellent.
Well, thank you to both Jody and Vashti for taking the time to speak with us today, and best of luck with moving forward. And to anyone who may be interested in becoming a certified MBE or would like to know more information, please visit oldlinelobbying.com. Thank you both again.
Thank you.
Both of you.